Our next sewing project is going to be an 18th century style apron. I'm using one of my favorite aprons as a pattern, and I'm going to make this one the same size. I happen to like that size. So the one that I'm copying is about 42 inches wide, so I need to remember that. And for a length, it looks like it's about 30 or so inches, maybe 30 inches. So I'm going to cut out the fabric 42 wide by 30 long. That'll be the first step. I'm going to make the apron out of this really beautiful Irish linen, 100% linen. I thought that I liked the colors in it very much. This fabric is about 60 inches wide, so we have plenty of room. I'm able to make this with just buying 1 yard. The first thing I'll do is I'll measure up 30 inches, and I use this white chalk to mark with. Make a mark right there. And then I'll go about 42 inches. Right there. Make another mark. Then I can cut that out. The nice thing about working with a check pattern is once you've made your mark, you can just follow the line, which is what I'll do here. This will leave me with a lot of fabric left over to make the waistband out of. So we put a hem on the 3 sides of the apron, the bottom and the left and the right. And to do that hem, it's just a simple rollover hem, where I fold the fabric over once, about 1/4 of an inch, and then over again, and then I pin it in place. After it's all pinned, I stitch it closed from the outside of the fabric, and I use a back stitch. Then I go all the way around, both sides and the bottom. I leave the top open because that's going to be stroke gathered, and we'll talk about that when we get to that point. It won't be long. Well, the hem is finished now, all the way around, 3 sides, the left side, the right side, and the bottom side, all the way around using that back stitch. So now the next step is to do the stroke gather stitches, which I'll explain. This is the stroke gather stitch. There's actually going to be 2 parallel stitches, just like this. It goes from left side to right side, or if you prefer from right side to left side, that doesn't matter. And you're just going to use a contrasting color. In this case I'm using white, and I try to make these stitches pretty close together. These stitches could actually be a little closer together, but when you do the second row of these stitches, you want it to follow in the exact same footstep as the first row of stitches. And I'll also show you that right here is one of the 3 markers for that mark the quarter marks of the width of the apron. So there's 1 for the half and 2 for the quarters. And I'll show you what they do later on. But for now, I'm doing the stroke gather stitches. We're preparing to make the stroke gathered waist now, because like I said, all of the hemming, the 2 sides and the bottom of the apron are done. The hemming is done. So I've executed these parallel lines on the waistband. Here's the 2 parallel lines, and they're not going to be seen. They're just for gathering purposes. So I've got those done. Well, there they are. These are the white threaded markers. They're going to come out eventually. They're just in 3 locations. 1 is in the middle, and then I've got 2 at the quarter marks. They're going to come out. They just show me, those are just for reference points. So that's pretty much the entire waistband area. Now with those 2 parallel threads, what you do is you take the end. They want to be fairly strong, and we're just going to bunch up the fabric along those threads. Just bunch it up. We've already done this. I did this about 2 days ago, and they're going to stay like that So stay like that until we're ready to put the waistband on, which would be probably tomorrow. So I've taken from our leftover fabric, I've cut 2 pieces out that are about 2 inches wide by 36 to 37 inches long. So there's one, and here's the other. So the next step will be to sew the 2 together at the butt end, so that we have one strip that is 6 feet long. I've got the 2 halves of the waistband sewn together now, and they're sewn together and flat felled. And this half of the waistband is ironed, so we'll have to iron the other half next. We're ironing over that little flap on the waistband, which will make it easier to line up and put over top of the stroke gathers of the waistband of the apron. So I'll just iron this little seam, not really a seam allowance, but I'll just iron this edge over. It makes everything nice and neat and crisp. We only do the one edge though. I've got the waistband pinned to the apron now. You can see that I've got these little thread markers. This is for the middle, and then I've got the 2 quarters. And so you can see how the stroke gathers are protruding from underneath the waistband. I think it's coming out really nice. So now I've basically got a sewing vest to take care of. I'm going to sew this entire line on. The waistband is almost finished being sewn on the one side. I've gotten this far on the front side. And then once I finish this little bit, then I'm going to be flipping it over, and I'll fold over the waistband and sew the other side in the same way. And then we just have to worry about the ties. All right, the waistband is on. It's entirely sewn on, and on both sides. I think that it turned out nicely. It's got those nice little stroke gathers that we like. Now the next step is to do the ties on the back. I'll show you how that's done. So when you come off the waistband, the excess fabric that we cut out, 2 inches wide if you remember, we still have about 18 inches or so left on each side. And this is where we ironed it and folded it over. So what we're going to do is we're going to just press over the other side like that. And we're going to pin those 2 together, sandwich that together, and we'll pin that. And then that will get sewn with the back stitch, like thus. Here's the other side where I've started. I folded it over together and started sewing it. I've gotten this far. You can see my pins and my needle, or I'm sewing those 2 sides together. Well, the apron is finished. I've got those nice little ties on there, which I'm very proud of. And they're part of the waistband actually. So that worked out pretty good. You can see those nice little stroke gathers. And again, this thing is about 34 inches long and it's about 42 inches wide. So that takes care of that project.